What up, Digital Slang? Welcome back. Today, the iPhone 8 Plus, is it still worth it in 2020? Bang for buck value. Is there still value in a phone that was released in 2017? Let's talk about it. Released in 2017, the iPhone 8 Plus, alongside with the iPhone 10, were Apple's newest phones. And this phone here did not get a lot of shine because everybody was excited for the overhaul and the redesign of the iPhone 10, the first phone with the notch, right? And I do have the iPhone 10 in the other room, but it doesn't work, so I'm not going to compare these two today. But overall, look, 5.5-inch LCD display. And overall, for an LCD, it's a very sharp display. It's sharper, with more pixel density than the iPhone XR, than the iPhone 11. So a very good display. You're not going to get the true blacks like you would with an OLED, but a very good display nonetheless. Now, the form factor on here, it is the same form factor as the iPhone 6, the 6S Plus, the 7 Plus, and the 8 Plus, as well as the non-Plus versions of the phone, just a bigger form factor. But I was a huge fan of it. And the fact that we get a home button here with Touch ID is a big deal in today's world. Face ID is terrible right now because everybody has to wear a face mask. So Touch ID, this is the second gen, the faster Touch ID. And I wish Apple would bring this back. And I would be a huge fan if Apple gave us, say, Touch ID on the back here, like we have on the Pixel phones, right? Give us a fingerprint sensor here on the back. You can make it a little lower, like the Apple logo is on the newer phones, but bring that back because we need it in this world. And unfortunately, the new phones, the 12 Pro Max, it's not going to have it. And we're going to be stuck with the notch. We're going to be stuck with Face ID. So if you're on a budget and you only have a couple $100, the iPhone 8 Plus is a fantastic buy in my opinion. Look, the A11 Bionic, it's a couple years old, but we all know Apple gives 5 years minimum of software updates. So we're going to be getting updates for this phone for years to come still. And the A11 at the time of release was the best chip in any phone. We all know how powerful Apple's chips are, and this phone is going to breeze through apps and it will do basically anything you ask it to do, and it's going to do it very well. Now, it's not as snappy and not as fast as today's phones, but a lot of that has to do with the animations. When you try and open an app up on iOS, you know, Apple has those long animations, so it's not as quick, it's not as snappy. But one thing it is, it's very smooth, and it will continue to run like that for years to come. It still will do everything you need it to do, and it will do it well. Now, this phone here, 256 gigs of storage. You can also get it in 64 if you want that. And we know the new phones this year coming with 64 gigs. So if you think you're missing out on something, you're not. 256 gigs has always been more than enough, and I think 128 should be the standard for all phones. It should be the minimum for all phones when it comes to storage. Now, 3 gigs of RAM in here, but again, going back to iOS and how efficient iOS is, the RAM in here, the RAM management in here is going to be fine. You can see the apps are still open that I've had on here for a long time. So RAM management on here, opening and closing apps, it will save some apps for you. It's not going to be as good as the phones of today, but you're also not spending $1,000 for this phone. Now, build quality on here, it is the glass and aluminum design. It does have wireless charging on the back. The battery on this phone is a 2765 milliamp battery, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but this phone and how efficient iOS is, it will last through the day, unlike the 2020 version of the iPhone SE. I cannot even get through 3/4 of a day on this phone here, but this 8 Plus here will absolutely last throughout the day, and it has never failed. It's always been just a really good experience. Now, again, 5.5-inch LCD display, and watching content on here is just an enjoyable experience, and mainly because you have these edges. Look, big bezels suck on phones. Let's just be real. We want an all-screen display, the hole punch cut out now, the notch is even outdated, tired of the notch. But on here, you do have places to hold, so you do get that good viewing experience. There is nothing that takes away from your experience on here. Stereo speakers, speaker on the bottom, speaker on the front. So overall, watching content on here is going to be a very enjoyable experience. I do have to check that video out, Flossie's new review of the Pixel 5. I'm excited to check that out, and I will be watching it on the iPhone 8 Plus. Now again, brightness on here, it's pretty good. It's not as bright as the phones of today, but it is brighter than the iPhone SE. Remember, this phone is $400. I can pick up an 8 Plus right now for $200, $250 all day long. Good deals, mint condition, much cheaper than the smaller form factor, less battery life on the iPhone SE. Single camera also on the iPhone SE. So the 8 Plus, it should be looking pretty good to you right now in 2020. Remember, it's still going to get 2 years of software updates. Not taking pictures on the iPhone 8 Plus. It's always taking good pictures. And at the time of its release in 2017, it was one of the best cameras on the market. And it will still take great pictures. And what do we use our cameras for? Social media, things like that. Taking pictures of your pets, of your friends, of your family, your day-to-day life. If you are a professional photographer, then this is probably not going to be the camera that you want in your phone. But if you are just, an everyday user and you want really good pictures, this will do the job. Video on here, it shoots great video, 4K, all the way up to 60 frames per second, and the quality of the video is fantastic. Now, it's not as good as the phones of today. Like some of the skies and everything, sometimes it is blown out. The dynamic range on here is not as good as it is on some of the phones of today, but overall, it still is a fantastic phone with a lot of value in 2020. Overall, this thing is still a beast. It still can do things. When you rotate it, it will still go into landscape mode, unlike the phones of today. It still does support 3D touch. You cannot get 3D touch on any phone, on any iPhone any longer. So I do miss it, right? Haptic touch is just not the same. It's just not as good. And I'm disappointed that we don't have it any longer. Again, software on here, A11 Bionic chip. You're gonna get software updates for years to come. Just a lot of value here in the 8 Plus because of what we can buy it for. In my opinion, much more value in the 8 Plus than the iPhone SE, the 2020 budget phone from Apple. So the iPhone 8 Plus, guys, check it out. I'll drop some links below. You can see the pricing on it because there's a lot of value here, especially if you like the bigger form factors. Again, this phone is exactly the same size as the iPhone 11 Pro Max and only a little bit smaller than the iPhone 12 Pro Max that is coming out in another month. So, but that's it for the video, guys. I'll be back soon. Peace.